Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Dark Sector by Waldo Rodriguez. Narrated by B.J. Harrison. Chapter 1. To Gabriel's amazement, there wasn't a single scar on his body after surviving the Flesh Ripper storm. Medical pods really were miraculous machines. Still, he inspected himself on the foggy bathroom mirror just to be sure he was in one piece. No scratches, no marks, nothing. It was as if every part of his damaged body had been replaced with brand-new parts, both inside and out. For all effective purposes, they had been. As far as he gathered from the nurses, medical pods effectively rebuild the damage a body has suffered through a combination of medical gel and nanomachines. There was a catch, though. The pods could repair a body, but if the person was already gone, all they would succeed in doing is bringing back an empty husk. Luckily, neither he nor Sergei were that far gone, but the big Russian bear still needed more time getting put back together. Gabriel had to admit he was a little bit disappointed by the lack of scars, though. Every scar on a person told a story of what a person had been through, and Gabriel had been through a lot after Phase 1. Gabriel had clawed his way up from a comically unqualified, out-of-shape F0 recruit to a D3. He'd gone from the literal bottom of the Crucible's leaderboard to the top 3. He'd overcome his own weakness, stared down death, and lost friends through the journey. Now, his body reflected his achievements with a powerful physique, but with none of the scars to show how he got there. Man, I bet some of those scars looked really cool, he thought. With a flex of his new muscles, he shrugged and grinned to himself. Oh well, plenty of time to get new ones. Phase 2, here we come. Enjoying yourself, Rivera? Gabriel caught the reflection on the mirror. It was Alexander and his surviving bodyguards. 10 men had arrived with Alexander on orientation day. Now, only 6 remained. Zachary, Alexander's voice of reason as far as Gabriel was concerned, was among them. The ashen-haired man gave Gabriel a casual, 2-finger salute as he strode by. Vargas, the oddball of the group, gave Gabriel a quick wave. His lips were pulled tight, like he had something on his mind. That was odd. Vargas wasn't really one to keep quiet unless Alexander told him to. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out Alexander was up to something by showing up like this. But just in case there was any doubt in Gabriel's mind, his guards moved to block off Gabriel from escape. "Until you showed up," Gabriel answered. Alexander chuckled. "Get dressed, Rivera. Fond as I'm sure you are of your accomplishments, I don't need to see them." Gabriel squinted at Hartford. "How very kind of you." He went for the pile of clothes the nurses had left for him after his stay in the medical pod. Zachary crossed his arms over his chest. He tried to look like his usual relaxed self, but there was a tension to his brow he couldn't hide. Vargas was much the same as he hooked his thumbs through his belt loops. Gabriel pulled on his pants. "Who let you in here anyway?" Alexander snorted. "You know who my grandfather is, right? Who I am?" "Right. Sometimes that humble act of yours makes me forget you practically own the place," Gabriel said, without the slightest effort to hide his sarcasm. "And what can I help you with today, Hartford?" Alexander gave a faint smile. "I merely wanted to check up on my rival after a most unfortunate turn of events." "Rival? Thought this was a one-sided relationship." Gabriel chuckled as he pulled on his boots. "Although I did technically beat you today, or however long it's been." He stroked his chin. "I think the nurse said I was out for 2 days in the pod." Alexander winced at the comment and crossed his arms. "It was, until Townsend decided you were in the running for leadership, and the board has taken her up on her recommendation." Gabriel gestured at his wrist comp with a smug grin. "Oh, I know. Apparently I earned their attention. And third place on the leaderboard, too. Not bad for a mistake, huh?" Alexander frowned. He was probably remembering the first time they met on the Crucible. Gabriel could hardly blame Hartford for believing his recruitment was a mistake either, in the shape he'd come in. Had the pack not cut down the recruitment pool for the Reclaimer project, he may very well have never been given the opportunity to join. That was, of course, making the bold assumption the spook who recruited him could be trusted. Since his family's life was in that man's hands, Gabriel sincerely hoped he could trust Webb. Gabriel shrugged. "Wouldn't worry too much about all that, though. Your grandfather will pull some strings to get you that crown of yours, I'm sure." Alexander shut his eyes and took a breath. It didn't stop the corner of his eyebrow from twitching. "I can handle my own problems, Rivera." "Wish Titus had believed that," Gabriel sighed. "Titus was an overbearing fool that stepped out of line against my orders," Alexander seethed. "As much as that man was like a father to me, he brought his fate upon himself. But you, Rivera, you earned his respect." Gabriel pulled on his shirt. "That's a funny way of saying failed to murder you." Though how Titus actually failed to kill him was still a mystery to Gabriel. The huge man had Gabriel dead to rights in his grasp, and if not for a lucky cut, he would have died right then and there. At least that's what he told himself. He didn't want to acknowledge the crimson glow he'd seen when he scored that lucky cut as anything more than an overactive imagination or a desperate mind trying to rationalize an insane situation. Alexander's brow tightened. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to make you an offer." Gabriel finished buttoning up his shirt. "This ought to be good. After losing 4 of my men to the maze and discussing matters with Zachary, I have decided it is unreasonable to continue isolating myself from the 42nd Company. This act of mine needs to stop, regardless of Grandfather's disapproval." Alexander glanced down, shifting his weight from one side to another. He let a long moment of silence hang in the air. "When you pulled me from that chasm, I realized I am not as indestructible as I believed myself to be." Gabriel looked at Alexander with growing curiosity. "So, I have decided we shall work together." Those piercing blue eyes met Gabriel's. "You have improved a great deal, Rivera, but you are still far too weak for what is to come. Phase 1 has turned you into fine, raw steel, but you still need to be forged into a proper blade." Gabriel cocked his head to the side, brow furrowed in annoyance. The Crucible may have helped turn him into the fine specimen he was today, but he put an absurd amount of extra time and effort into his training. He didn't need Alexander's help to get stronger, and he certainly didn't need it to best him. "I am offering you training with some of the finest specialists the world has ever seen, from martial arts to marksmanship, survival, and more. All of my resources will be made available to you." Alexander's arms spread out. "These men have been my teachers and protectors since I was 5 years old, and if you join me, they will serve you as well." Gabriel's expression changed from annoyance to concern for Alexander. He'd heard of ancient cultures training their young men for war at an extremely young age, but that sort of thing was frowned upon, to say the least, in the modern day. It was no wonder Alexander was so messed up. Jesus Christ. Did you even have a childhood? Zachary chuckled. He used to be a cute kid, honest. Alexander shot him a stern glance. Zachary couldn't help smirking. Hartford dropped his arms to his side as his attention returned to Gabriel. "A strange upbringing, to be sure, but a fine one." He took a step toward Gabriel. "One necessary to prepare for the coming future, Rivera. One I can use to help you reach your full potential." Gabriel leaned his head back, eyes shut in thought, with his arms crossed. While there was no shortage of competition within the Crucible for position on the leaderboards, or for who would earn command from the company level all the way up to the Reclaimer mission as a whole, they were all gathered together for one purpose: preserving humanity. Alexander's idea of how to go about doing that was vile to Gabriel. His plan basically boiled down to ruling with an iron fist and micromanaging things to an absurd degree. Gabriel was pretty certain there was no shortage of people who would find that approach as vile as he did, and the last thing humanity needed, when there were only going to be 1,000 of them left, was a civil war, at least if they had any plans of actually starting over. But there was no doubt in Gabriel's mind that there were advantages to working with him. If Alexander's men were as good as he claimed they were, the 42nd could easily become a top-tier company in no time with their help. Judging by how terrifying Titus had been to deal with, Gabriel didn't think Alexander was making empty boasts. Gabriel exhaled. "I don't know. Think about it, Rivera. That tenacity of yours, that drive. My men will take you to heights you never thought possible." Alexander took another step toward Gabriel. "Given enough time, you will truly become my equal, truly rival me." He rested his hands on Gabriel's shoulders. "Imagine how much you can improve under my wing, Rivera. We would be unstoppable." Gabriel quirked a brow at the way Alexander spoke. He seemed too eager, almost forced. Every word out of his mouth, even the ones marred by anger, came with the charm dialed up to 11. Every single offer Alexander made was focused on one person and one person alone: Gabriel. Alexander mentioned working with the rest of the company earlier, but was he sincere? He wanted to believe it. He didn't want to fight with any of his fellow Reclaimers, even ones he disagreed with as strongly as Alexander. They were at the Crucible to work together toward a common goal. "What about the others?" Gabriel finally asked. Alexander flinched at the question. He turned away, eyes darting upward as if searching for an answer. "Certainly your friends show potential. If you are willing to continue carrying them on your back, they could become great assets." Assets. That's all they were to Alexander. He'd shown as much when he left one of his injured men to die in the second maze. After seeing a hint of humanity in Hartford's desperation to save Titus, Gabriel wanted to believe that there was a chance they could bring him around. He was probably being naive, projecting his own good onto Alexander. Gabriel hardened his glance on Alexander. "And the rest of the company?" Alexander pursed his lips in a tight frown. "I suppose, with a measured approach, we may be able to bend them into something useful, but I would not hold my breath. Their prospects are grim, Rivera." So were mine. Gabriel kept that to himself. "Now I offer you access to these resources and my undying loyalty if only you swear an oath to serve me." There was a faint crack in Alexander's voice. Gabriel's gaze narrowed. "You're lying, aren't you?" "What?" "You're not interested in helping others, not even me." Gabriel pulled back, but there wasn't anywhere to go with the bathroom counter behind him. "You want me out of the way." Alexander's hand slipped from Gabriel's shoulders. "Where did you pick up such a ludicrous idea? Come on. You don't need a high rank in awareness to put 2 and 2 together, Hartford. You've been training your whole life to take command of this mission. It stabs at you that someone else, especially some bottom-of-the-barrel nobody like me, is even being considered for the role." Gabriel chuckled. "You're just here to make sure I can't take command from you, aren't you?" Alexander shut his eyes, and gave a frustrated exhale. "Hartford, you know this was never going to happen. I can't willingly follow anyone who sees people as expendable. Someone who thinks people shouldn't lead their own lives." Gabriel placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, hoping he could reach through to him somehow. "But maybe we can put aside our differences to work together. Maybe even learn from one another." Zachary's face fell. He turned and walked away with Vargas. "Soft as ever." Alexander's voice carried a silent growl. A cold metal prick pierced the skin on the side of Gabriel's neck. Gabriel's body grew heavy. His mind clouded. His vision blurred. Gabriel's legs gave out beneath him. He latched onto Alexander's shirt with what little strength he had left. "What did you—" Gabriel woke to an unsettling calm. There were no lights ripping them from their sleep. No instructors shouting. Not even recruits scrambling to get in gear. There was nothing in the still air of wherever he was. Cool sand and rocks scraped beneath his fingers. He definitely wasn't back in the barracks. Gabriel sat up with a groan. The world blurred past his vision, his dazed mind struggling to put the pieces together. His face twisted. Gabriel raised a hand up to his pounding head. Rocky walls came into focus around him. The faint flutter of fabric pulled his attention to the side. A camouflaged tarp covered the exit. Light filtered through it, dancing gently over the cave. Gabriel winced as light bounced into his eyes. A knife was stabbed into the ground between his legs. Its edge gleamed now and again in the dark cave. He reached for the knife only to gasp. His wrist comp was gutted. The shiny new device he'd gotten was gone. Nothing but a few ripped wires remained inside the device. But who would do such a thing? He felt like he knew the answer, but the fog of his mind was too thick to grasp the answer. Certain his mind would clear up eventually, Gabriel took the knife and crawled to his feet. Carefully, he stepped through the tarp. An endless expanse of sand spread out before him. Only the occasional rock and distant mountain broke up the scenery. The sun peeked over the horizon, bathing the desert and skies in the purple blues and oranges of dawn. No sign of the Crucible, no signs of life, no sign of a way back home. Gabriel was abandoned in the desert. It was only then his dazed mind put the pieces together. Chapter 2. "Hartford, you son of a bitch," Gabriel growled under his breath. He'd pulled Alexander from the jaws of death back in the maze, and this is how he repaid him? By throwing him out to the desert? He remembered the moment like it was yesterday, and as far as his mind was concerned, it may as well have been after his stay in the medical pod. Alexander had gone back through the maze with Valentino to save Titus. The giant of a man was badly wounded after trying to kill Gabriel in the maze. They were running for their lives from the same pitfall traps that claimed Gabriel's friends Albrecht and Okumura during the first maze. Titus wasn't going anywhere fast with his wounds, and Valentino had earned his own wounds that hindered his speed. Both men were claimed by the maze, leaving Alexander alone to leap across an enormous gap if he had a hope in hell of getting out alive. He came up short. Gabriel had strongly considered letting him die. It would have avoided so many problems in the future. But Gabriel couldn't ignore the terrified, pleading look in Alexander's eyes. It burned itself into his mind, and Gabriel had to save his rival's life. Gabriel was strongly regretting that decision. "When I get back to the Crucible, I'm going to kill Alexander," he thought, then took a breath. "No, that's a quick way of getting thrown out. I can't abandon the others over revenge. But I can kick his ass." Gabriel grimaced. The last time he and Alexander fought ended with him coughing up his lungs on the floor and spitting blood. "Okay, we'll work on how to kick his ass first, then kick it," he told himself. This was, of course, making the bold assumption he could even make it back to the Crucible. Where the hell am I? Dry air warmed around him with every passing second as the sun climbed into a deep, blue, cloudless sky. An expanse of rolling sands spread as far as the eye could see. There was not one single scrap of shelter in sight beside the cave he'd just crawled out of. No landmarks, nothing. Gabriel was thoroughly screwed. Wind gusted over him. A flutter of paper against metal caught his attention. Gabriel raised his ruined wrist comp. Loose wires hung from the gutted device where projectors and inputs once sat, leaving an open cavity inside containing the culprit. Gabriel pulled out the neatly folded paper. It was an archaic form of communication, but given his only electronic was nothing more than armor for his left forearm now, it got the job done. He unfolded the paper. It was a letter in fine cursive penmanship. They definitely don't teach this in school anymore. Luckily for him, his mother had been adamant about teaching him. "Rivera, if you are reading this letter, then you have foolishly declined my offer to work together for the good of humanity. However unfortunate this decision may be for mankind, it was not unexpected. Soft people such as yourself simply do not have it in them to make the difficult choices ahead, which is why I cannot risk losing the role of leadership to you or anyone else. The world to come will be a dangerous one. Choices will have to be made that the others will not understand. Sacrifices, Rivera, will have to be made." Gabriel shook his head at what he was reading. Surely he was softer than Alexander was, but he wasn't naive or blind to the reality of their situation. But where Alexander was willing to sacrifice their entire company, Gabriel was willing to do whatever it took to save as many of them as he could at any cost. "My men recommended I dispose of you after you ensured Titus's death, but I am not without gratitude. You spared my life when you had no reason to. Were I in your shoes, I would have let you fall without a second thought. Thus I have granted you a mercy. Attached to this letter is a map, charting a course across the desert to a nearby town. The trek is long, but we have stashed supplies along the way. Once there, make a call to the number on the back, and a private transport will take you to your family. I know you care for them deeply. Do not attempt to return to the Crucible. You will not find it on this nor any other map. Without supplies or shelter, the journey will end in your untimely demise. Go home, Rivera. Be with your family. Enjoy your last days on this dying world. I wish you the best of luck on your journey. Alexander Hartford." Just go home? After everything he'd been through, Alexander wanted him to turn tail and run away? Gabriel pulled the knife from his belt with a white-knuckle grip. He was about to jam the knife through the letter when the wind exposed the map underneath. He took a breath and sheathed the knife. If he made it back to the Crucible, he was going to need the evidence. A paper relic, the grid map laid out the desert around him with a circle marked, "You are here." Chained together arrows showed the path he was to take, northwest through a sea of sand and rock formations. Little green houses over mountainous areas marked shelters, even where the entrances were. His path was laid out for him, easy to follow, and if Alexander was telling the truth, Gabriel would be reunited with his family again. Life was so much easier back then, when he was just a civilian, when he didn't know their world was dying. Gabriel shook his head. He'd come too far, sacrificed too much, lost too many people. Running from the Crucible meant abandoning his friends, leaving Alexander to take control of the Reclaimer mission. Worse still, if Hunter Webb, the spook that talked him into the Reclaimer project, found out Gabriel ran away, his family's safety wouldn't be guaranteed. No dice, Hartford. I'm coming back. The others need me. Gabriel scanned the map again. If Alexander wanted him to head northwest, maybe the Crucible was to the southeast. The desert around the base was vast, and sneaking off with vehicles and supplies was bound to get noticed by the guard. Alexander could get away with a lot of things, but dumping a fellow recruit in the desert probably wasn't one of them. Going in a straight line from the Crucible was the fastest way Gabriel could think of for Alexander and his men to set up this deadly march in a reasonable time frame. But there was no guarantee of that. Heading down that long and dusty road meant crossing a burning sea with no shelter for miles upon miles. But there was hope. A plateau, and a high one, if he was reading the map right, was to the southeast of his position. The high ground would let him get his bearings, maybe even catch a glimpse of the Crucible or a patrol. It was a stupid idea, he knew that much, but anything was better than wasting the cool morning air and letting Alexander have an easy win. Food and water were the biggest hurdles to tackle, and the desert wasn't the sort of environment to let him get his hands on either with any sort of ease. If he was lucky, he'd find some cacti to wring water out of, or spot some animals digging up water from the sand. Hunting said animals for food with a knife was another challenge. Gabriel would just have to run fast, or hope a snake came at him and he was faster. Can he even eat raw snake? He wondered, noticing the distinct lack of anything flammable around him. He'd have to take the risk if it came down to it. Gabriel tore the synth-cloth tarp covering the cave entrance and fashioned a cloak out of it. He headed off into the desert, pulling the hood low over his head. The journey was simple enough at first, almost enjoyable, barring the heat. No instructors yelling at him, no death traps trying to murder him every other step, and clear skies meant no killer storms coming to cut his life short. But the desert didn't need any of that to kill a man. It only needed time to cook him alive. Hours rolled past, like the thick sweat pouring down his brow. The sun climbed to its peak, and with it climbed the scorching temperatures sapping precious moisture from his body. Gabriel's throat tightened as the desert went on without end, nor sign of food or water. Deadly as an ever-shifting maze full of death traps had been, they always had a finite stopping point, a light at the end of the tunnel. But this was another beast entirely. Can I really survive this journey? It isn't too late to turn around. Gabriel shook those thoughts out of his mind. Doubt was a luxury he didn't have time for, if he was going to survive. It was do or die in the desert, with a high probability of die. If Gabriel didn't believe in himself, it didn't matter which path he chose. He decided he was going to make it back to the Crucible no matter what it took. Gabriel's throat was dry, tight, and scratchy by the time the sun began to set. His eyes were heavy from the merciless heat, his feet crying out with every step. He needed to rest soon, but desert nights were just as merciless as the days, going from extreme heat to extreme cold. If he didn't find shelter soon, there was a good chance he wouldn't last the night. He'd join all those other recruits whose lives were cut short by the Crucible. A shudder ran up his spine at the thought, the memory of that nightmare he had in the medical pod. The frigid hands of the dead coiling around him, trying to drag him into the void. They felt so real, even though it had only been a dream. Part of him wondered if that was what death was like, one's soul ripped from their body and dragged into cold nothingness by vengeful or restless spirits. Gabriel sighed. Those thoughts weren't going to help.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?